This Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Cannabis with me, Tamarijuana. This morning I have co-director Teresa Taylor with me from Craft Cannabis, and I'm really excited to talk to her about so many things that they've got going on. A lot of us believe that, the corporate end of, cannabis growing is taking over, but there are people out there lobbying for our rights to still be able to have a craft artisan business. So welcome, Teresa. Say hello to everybody, and let us find out where you're from and what you've been up to.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on, Tamara. That's awesome. I'm in Grand Forks, BC. So I'm in the heart of the Kootenay boundary region, which tops out as one of British Columbia's primary cannabis growing areas. I think there was a study just came out recently talking about where the most weed related arrests happen. And I was so proud that we'd made the list. I was looking, sort of combing through it, going, I hope we're in there. I hope we're in there. And I moved here when I was probably about 20 years old. And my dad was just running for mayor at that time, pretty much like the next day. And he was a newcomer to the area. There was a mayor here in town who'd been in for about 20 years. And my dad showed up and he was a bit of a renegade and he'd pulled a couple publicity stunts like, he spelled out the words hemp on our hillside property so that you could see it from the highway and planted hemp in the field and waited to get arrested. So but there's a big group of Doukhobors. This community was founded by Russians and they were, an agricultural, peace-loving, religious group. And so they were, and they had used hemp for years for fabric and from what I've heard as a medicine, packed into a cloth bag for children to teethe on and that sort of thing. So they really liked him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he wound up winning. And so it was like, wow, this is kind of cool. I'm going to watch how things unfold. And coming from the Okanagan, it was a nice place for me to kind of settle. It's that the agricultural roots kind of really brought me.
Yeah, it's beautiful in that area too. And your dad is pretty iconic within the cannabis movement. Like your dad is Brian Taylor and he was the mayor of Grand Forks. And he has done some amazing things over the last, like bringing even like cannabis to mainstream with being the mayor of Grand Forks. And now I recall back in, I think it was 1998 or 97 that they did the first consortium out there where everybody, you were involved in that as well, were you not?
Absolutely. That was really amazing. I didn't know who these people were. They just, they all came to our community and it was, Mark Emery was there and Renee Bourget and Philippe Lucas and Hillary Black and, Dr. Hornby. And I was just like, oh yeah, who are these people? But because I had a bit of a disconnect, it was good. I was able to co-facilitate some of their early strategy meetings because I had a bit of a distance from everything. And so I had an amazing opportunity to connect with all of these people at a pretty pivotal point in the movement. But it was almost kind of tragic to watch what happened because there was a real division and separation that occurred back then between the hemp faction and the recreational users and the medical users, and people kind of just went their own ways. And there was a little bit of some sort of demonization that happened there. Like, we're not them, hemp is different, and we're right. The people who are fighting for the rights of industrial cannabis tried to distance themselves from recreational and medical use. And yeah, it's fascinating to kind of look at what happened. David Malmo-Levine was there as well, and I remember him sort of crying out like, "This is divide and conquer! Like this is going to take us down. We can't head this direction."
It's gone over the last almost 2 decades, where in division with the recreational and the medicinal and the hemp industrial, and there's so many benefits for all of it to be combined in one. In reality, right? But with the way that our government's looking at legalization or regulation, over-regulation is what I'd like to call it, they're giving the corporates the opportunity to kind of come in and even divide us even further, being industrial hemp, corporate licensed producers, and then the artisans.
Well, absolutely. And I think that the big part that stands out in that for me is the is that medical and a request for medical usage in a Western medical model asks for that pharmaceutical level control, right? In Western medicine, everything needs to be precise, and every batch needs to be the same. And there's something about folk medicine that doesn't subscribe necessarily to that idea that we have to produce every crop the same way. And there's a bit of fluidity to it. There's a bit of self-regulation and control about dosage and understanding different strains and sort of playing with different things. So it's it's difficult. I understand there's some patients who find the thing that works for them and want that consistency over time. But what that has done to a certain degree is cut out people who are a bit more flexible. And that's why I believe that maybe what we might see is that the opportunity for craft, unfortunately, might be more in line for recreational markets as opposed to a medical market.
Right. But, a lot of medical patients, too, will also tell you that they develop a tolerance, right? So they're not always specifically looking for a specific strain. And I think they need that quality and that difference of variety as well. Hence why the dispensary model, comparably to the licensed producer model, is seeming to be, kind of a way that people like to go as well. Never mind, like myself being a patient, when I'm growing my own, I don't grow just one strain specific. I find that I need a couple different, and I change them. Like we change them, every other crop kind of thing, where it's not the same strain. We're not consistently growing the same strain all the time, because as a patient, I find that they don't work all the time. Because, and as a grower too, being a grower too, the plant is not specifically the same all the way through the plant. Like the difference between the bottoms and the tops, and even the same strain can run a different product off a different plant, even though being the same strain.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Right. And we're comfortable with that. But I think for people that might be new to cannabis or just the powers that be, there's this expectation that medicine is this encapsulated, precise deliverable.
Absolutely. And that's where I think we run into the issues, is where we've got so many, like I said, with the division, right, where we've got so many that want to have the exact same precise every time. So like you said, with it, we kind of almost leaning towards recreational. But in reality, I don't feel that there's a difference. I think that medicinal, recreational, we're all incumbents in using it for some purpose, whether it be for sleeping, eating, or even just relaxing. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with you. I believe that altered states through the use of substances serve a variety of purposes, and those that are considered recreational are in fact therapeutic, and generally, they're for things like relaxation and maybe relieving social anxiety in social settings, and all those reasons that people use alcohol in a recreational setting can also apply to cannabis. And yet, alcohol at some point in time in history was considered to be therapeutic as well. But that's some of the language that early Canadian Cannabis Coalition group that we tried to kind of hash through was the use of the word therapeutic use as opposed to recreational or medical. But then, of course, in the religious or sacramental use, people were like, wait a second, I don't know if that includes us. Right. So what it comes down to, bottom line, is just that autonomy of the person, and recognizing that there's no harm done in using cannabis in a safe, educated manner, and we should be allowed to make those decisions as responsible humans.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we're all, I think most of us are all on the same page when it comes to that. Even, when it comes to medicinal use for children, if that's, like I'm no more going to go and start putting my 7-year-old on hemp oil or CBD oil because he's not needing it just because he's 7, and I feel that it's something that he could possibly benefit from. Like, you want to, that's my general consensus when it comes to the children. If you have an autistic or an epileptic child that you feel that should be, using it for medicinal, but like I said, it's therapeutic as well too. So like I said, back to the division, right? There's so many divides within this movement. So it's harvest time out your way, and
yes.
And everywhere pretty much across the province and into Ontario, this is harvest time. So where you guys are up to your eyeballs in that, keeping yourselves busy with harvest?
Absolutely. Well, we have a new setup this year, and our plants are more exposed, and they're out on the hillside. So they were more exposed to the elements this year, which was fascinating. Just to really feel like a farmer this year. I used to love storms, and I used to really I'd look at the dark clouds coming over the hillside and be like, wow, this is awesome. And now doesn't matter where I am in the valley, I can see the sky turning dark, and I'm just like, oh shit. And I start, cross my fingers and hope for the best. So it's been a great lesson for me, and just understanding that sort of agricultural history. It's also been spectacular because we grow sun-grown organic outdoor. That's what people have called it. Typically is outdoor. We're going to try to switch it to sun-grown because it sounds better. And we have trimmers. We had a few new trimmers this year, and they were typically people who've been accustomed to working on indoor crops, and the looks on their faces and the sort of euphoria that they all felt in just being outside and being around these plants was just so awesome to see. And it really reminded me of how impacted our industry / movement, whatever we call it now, has been from prohibition and having to grow inside out of necessity and having to hide. And that this was an opportunity that really shouldn't be foreign to these people at this point in time, but was. So.
Right. And that's unfortunate that, you've got so many, and like you said, the sun grown sounds better, but I mean, the outdoor is sustainably throughout this whole province. Like BC has a, $1 billion industry prior to even speaking about regulation or even medicinal. Like BC's been running off cannabis for 20, 30 years. Like the industry is so strong, even through the Kootenay Valley, out through Nelson and everywhere else. There's so many people out there that they make their livelihoods off growing outdoor sustainably, right? They don't have anything going. Now, from the other perspective too, there's a lot of indoor gardening going on too, which is terrific. Now, now you guys have an indoor facility as well, or just the outdoor?
No, not this year. We've talked about it, but our production is good to sort of make it through the year. One of our directors for the Craft Cannabis Association, he runs a grow shop in the Kootenays, and he says right now is really, really busy, that they find that this is the time of year when someone they've got an outdoor crop and they switch gears and start to focus on indoor, that there's a bit of a changeover that's happening there. So yeah. And I've grown indoors before. I find it a bit precarious sometimes. It's funny because I'm afraid of the weather, but there's something that it's also, there's everything. There's less risk, it seems, in the outdoor crops. I mean, our natural predators come in and look after bugs, and the wind is great and sort of runs through everything, and there's a lot of air circulation, and it's interesting. It seems to work a bit more, well, naturally, if you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And from like, I've only ever grown inside myself, right? So, for me to hear how the outdoor, I'd love to come out and see, because I've never actually seen an outdoor garden being grown sustainably ever. And I mean, I've been doing this now for 9 years, and I've, seen plenty of indoor gardens, and you're right. It's very, precarious, where you have to worry about bugs and your temperatures and your environment and the circulation and everything else, and the expenses, which is something else. A lot of patients and people that want to grow cannabis don't have the money. Like, you don't, who's got $50,000 to go start up, a room that's got that, sustainability.
Exactly. And that's one of my biggest sort of pieces of angst against the current system and our licensed production, and why I look at it and go, I don't even want to play that game until we can do what we're doing here on our hillside as part of production and, normalized legal production. That it's ludicrous to think that you would have to invest millions of dollars into a warehouse or a greenhouse that passes certain standards before you have the eligibility to grow. And I think, you mentioned that we have a long history of legacy producers in this region. And that's the other piece of it that I see, is that there's a lot of people who've worked tirelessly, either in providing supply for people in need or in being advocates and activists. And there's sort of this surge of new energy into the industry, which is a great thing. But along with it is coming this, we're stepping up the game and we're doing things right and we're the business people, and there's sort of no room for these people anymore. And thanks for all the work and tireless work that you've done, but step out of the way, because now the big boys are going to play the game, right?
Right. And I hear you on that level. Like I said, considering, you've gone back to prior to the 2000 mark. The patients, were fighting in court for Section 56 back in the late 90s. It was in 98, 97. I think Al was going and Robin were going into court. And I mean, it's been it's been such a long battle to get us to where we are now. Now, Craft Cannabis is lobbying specifically for having the sunshine outdoor type of sustainability, correct? Or is it more for just growing, or what exactly is the mandate? And we're going to be going to a break here in about 2 minutes. So we'll kind of start with that, and then we'll do the break, and then we'll come back to that. But
you bet. We started with a launch of a campaign, the Craft Cannabis campaign, which was an effort to get the consumer really aware of who they were supporting when they go to their local dispensary or when they buy from the person down the block, that there's this economy that exists, and that product itself it's not black market, it's not gray market, it's craft, it's small producers, it's your local economic structure that you're supporting. And in that, it gives you choice, and it gives you a sense of pride in the fact that you're purchasing local, and it does all of these things. And so that was our first step, was just to make sure that was really clear for people, and to kind of place a language that it was starting to emerge, but really solidify that language for people.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think that we should all, shop local, buy from your local farmers. There are people out there in your areas. And I think that's what community is so, important within our own cannabis community. Now, you're being 6 hours, I think, but you're 6 hours away from me, I think. I think because I'm in Cranbrook and you're in Grand Forks. So I think it's 6 hours. Now, the difference between that 6 hours in community makes a difference. And so being more involved, like how do people get more involved in your area? Because they want to be able to contact you. Like, do you have somewhere that they can contact you, like, to get a hold of you just in your area? Are there people that know what you guys are doing more out there, or?
Well, we're getting out as much as possible to different events and speaking. We have some next steps that we're working on in terms of organizing producers and building a network. It's similar to, I think, what we saw happen early in BC with the grape growers. And as they fought for inclusion in a wine model, there's some similar things that are going to be happening with cannabis. So our organization right now is advocacy based, but as it moves forward, it will be more industry based. So there will be opportunity for membership as a producer, to have products showcased as craft, and to be recognized as craft. So that's the direction we're headed.
Awesome. That sounds great. Okay, we're going to go to a commercial break and a song, and then we'll come back and continue talking to Teresa Taylor and find out a little more about what Craft Cannabis is doing. Oh, maybe not. Keep going. I'm sorry.
We could sing.
Yeah,
yeah, but if people want to contact me, I can be reached at Teresa, Teresa, at craftcannabis.ca, and you can shoot me a message and we can chat about what's going on and keep you in the loop.
Well, we have some more time. My nice little man behind the bag is telling me we have 5 more minutes. So
okay. All right. Ask me another question.
So Karma Cup, we just had Karma Cup on the weekend. And now you had some of your people out in Toronto at the Karma Cup, right?
Yeah, I haven't checked in with Sarah yet. Sarah is one of our founding directors as well, Sarah Campbell. She's a caramel maker, and she's awesome and fabulous and a really great person to work with. Her partner is Matt Barron from House of the Great Gardener, and they've been doing a lot of touring because he's got some amazing strains that he's working his way across the world. And so she's been a representative on behalf of the Craft Cannabis movement through her involvement with some of these things. So she sat on a couple of panels. She was invited to sit on a Women Grow, or no, it wasn't Women Grow, it was Normal Women panel about sexism in the industry. And so she had that one. And then right after, there was a Craft Cannabis panel, which she had originally not been invited to, and it was all male. So it was kind of, the irony was sort of funny. Yeah, so I haven't checked in with her yet to find out how that went, but yeah.
Well, it's good to see that event actually did go off, because I know there was a few hiccups in that momentum to get that going, and I'm pleased to see that Sarah and Tracy were able to keep going with that. Now, apparently Tracy's going to be on the Pace Radio Show tonight, talking with Al and Debbie Schultz-Giffen, so everybody can tune in. Yeah, to the Pace Radio Show and maybe get some more info about how that all went down, which is, like I said, it's great to see with such, with Toronto being, a hard area these days, which is so disheartening, because Toronto was, one of the first places I went when I first got involved, and it was so different compared to Alberta, because that's where I was kind of starting and forging out, right? Now moving to BC, like, it's totally, even though I'm in here, and like we were discussing this before, like where I've been to the mayor here, and dispensaries not on the lips, right? They're allowing Delcar to come in here, which is a licensed production. So, you know what I mean? So that's where I'm kind of like looking at you guys, Craft Cannabis, saying, okay, help me out here. Like, not that, not looking at you going, help me, but you know what I mean? Trying to take some ideas from where you are, because you're only 6 hours away, to bring that in this part of the East Kootenay as well, right? Because, East Kootenay, even though you're in the East Kootenay, we've got the West Kootenay, we've got the interior. There's so many areas in this area alone that really need to come together too, right?
And what we're finding is that there are a lot of receptive ears on a regional and municipal level. There's a lot of, there's effort to lobby on a federal level, but we really don't feel like that. We feel like the federal government has an agenda. I mean, I can't make the sweeping statement for everybody on our team, but I would expect they'd all concur that the most receptive people are those on a local, regional level who see the impact that cannabis has had in their communities and recognize they might know a grower or two themselves, and they recognize the importance. And I think it's really easy nowadays with all the sort of corporate energy around us to see what it would mean for our country when you have a limited number of producers, when you have a handful, 30 something for the entire country. I mean, it's not rocket science. So a lot of people really get this already, and it's a matter of just stepping it up and saying, okay, how can we make that happen? And at this point, the easiest step is to make that conscious decision as a consumer as to where you buy your cannabis. So that's why it's interesting to see, Ontario moves from their liquor board, or that they want to distribute cannabis. And, what do people think of that? And will people choose to buy their cannabis through a liquor store or a pharmacy,
Right. Okay, we're going to go to a quick break now, and then we will continue back to where we left off the last time we tried this. So we'll be back with Teresa Taylor in about 5 minutes. Stay tuned. So we'll be back with...
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
I calls up buddy, hey yo, I need some more green again. QP, D's the stem. I wanna get blazed like I was 14 again. Wait patiently, grab my bongs and start cleaning them. I anticipate, where's my cash, get it straight. Got a scale, check the weight, better be no fucking shake. Or have no funny taste, for my money's sake. Look buddy, wait, I should get a break. The shit you said was grade A, it's straight hay. For the money that I pay, you should roll me up a J. He said that's all she wrote. We laughed and had a toke. He got his cash and hit the road. I got my stash, I'm good to go.
You got some bud buddy, I need some bud buddy. I got some money. If you got bud buddy, bud buddy, bud buddy. I need some bud buddy. I got some money. If you got bud buddy, bud buddy. Since 300 BC it's been used by all men. Marijuana is a cultural medicine. Don't you believe all the things that you hear? For ganja is coming, yes, Jah is coming. Times have changed from buying a dime at a time and trying to get high with 2 spliffs or 6 guys. Nowadays a joint barely gets me by, cause I'm smoking with Mary Jane on the daily. Usually pay my respects on time, but somehow it just seems to slip my mind. I need to see the man cause it's Friday night and I can't get my head straight, can't get my head straight. Call up buddy, telephone is ringing. I'm getting nervous, hear the fat lady singing. About to hang up, call it quits for the night. Then I hear, hello? And I say, hey there guy, you got some bud buddy. I need some bud buddy. I got some money. If you got bud buddy, bud buddy, bud buddy. I need some bud buddy. I got some money. If you got bud buddy, bud buddy.
Is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CTCP Society, or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners. You can contact us on the internet www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, Cannabis Partners.
Okay. And I think we are back. So we were talking to Teresa Taylor from Craft Cannabis, and we were discussing the whole crafting and how we're going to get, pharmacies now are actually, applying Shoppers Drug Mart. We were kind of talking about that prior to the commercial. So we'll go back to that. So what's your feelings on the whole pharmacy, liquor board type of distribution?
Well, I think what I wouldn't like to see, what I don't want to see is an exclusive right. If these agencies get the chance to retail cannabis without persecution, that's something that we want as well as a movement and as a community. And so I guess it comes back to consumer choice. And I really would love to see the day that cannabis was so sort of comfortably positioned in the world that we didn't have the excessive regulation that we do. So, you could find it at Shoppers Drug Mart, or, I had a caller on a radio show the other day say, I think that Walmart is going to have clones in the future. And what do you think of that? And I was like, wow, sure, great. I wouldn't buy my clones from Walmart, but that would be the day it would be shocking to see it be that mainstream. Even in terms of like stuff like plant numbers, I'm a bit of an idealist and sort of have this vision of the future where we could grow as many plants as we want, but when we shift it into a business and sell it, that then there's a bit of conditions on how we treat our product and that sort of thing. But that as individuals, we should have the ability and right to grow as many plants as we want and whichever plants we want. And that's just a sort of natural piece of being a human on the earth. So sometimes those arguments, well, they're not really an argument, it's more of a position, but they seem so simplistic. And you sometimes feel like a bit of a hippie saying them, but that's really where my heart is in that, is that this is a substance that's found naturally in our environment, and cultivation is just part of our right.
Well, and it's part of us. I mean, as humans, we cultivate anything that we absolutely need, right? Whether it be food or, and it's the same with the industrial hemp. They're restricted as well as cannabis. Like the industrial hemp farmer industry, they're not able to, produce as many plants as they want. They have to keep it under certain regulations too, which, hemp on the other hand is definitely not harmful. There's no THC compounds or CBD compounds no THC compound in hemp at all. So another aspect of why they limit us so much, when it comes to hemp, right?
Well, and I think that's been part of the difficulty is, the THCA is there as apparently is something that helps to buffer the plant against some of the impact of its natural environment, like the cold. And so if left over time, a hemp cultivar will begin to increase its THC content because of the weather and stress and that sort of thing. And so there's this constant need for testing to make sure that your crop, when you're growing industrial hemp, falls under a certain amount of THC. And there's a restriction on the cultivars, and you are supposed to incinerate everything that's extra. You can't have any seeds like that. It's just so unusual. And I think that's the piece that gets me. I have a son, and we're quite open about cannabis. I have some pretty open conversations with him, and that's been one of the interesting pieces is like, well, why do we have a license? Why do you have to have a license for this? We had an experimental hemp patch up the hill a couple years ago, and don't tell anybody, but it crossed with some of our marijuana, and we got a 1-to-1 CBD THC some product out of it. And so, that's against the law. You're not allowed to do that. That's not something you can do. And so it's just these natural agricultural things that are so heavily restricted by what's been created around us.
I know. And that's almost ridiculous that, that plant accidentally produced by cross, because it was in a different field across the way. Now you're breaking the law. Like, how ridiculous does that sound? Completely ridiculous. Now, speaking of the law, I've had my, fair run-ins with, the Ministry of Alberta's Child Protection Services at one point too. You've had a recent visit from them as well, have you not?
Yes, I did. A couple of weeks ago, I received a call that there had been a call about our crop, and I kind of pretty sure I know who made the call. And first I was angry. Because this person was vindictive, and it certainly has a stake in the industry as well, so isn't foreign to it, and is we're really open about the fact that we cultivate here on the land and have done so for years. So it wasn't new. It was clearly just sort of vindictive, but the fact that could still be used against somebody, it's there and it's present. So I kind of went, well, you know what, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to maybe educate this social worker. So that was quite eye-opening for me. She really didn't have a whole lot of knowledge about cannabis in general. And so she was asking questions like, how many pounds do you get? And sort of trying to gauge the risk of our crop based on the quantity that we produce. And I guess I've got this sense. It's like, okay, she's trying to figure out, like, I mean, how toxic is this?
But it's not. And that's the whole point. Like, it doesn't matter how many pounds of cannabis you would have in your house. It's no more toxic than having pounds of basil in your house.
Exactly. I said to her that there's probably, there's going to be more alcohol in my house right now. That the alcohol content in my house, even though it might be a bottle of tequila and half a bottle of cooking wine, is enough to potentially kill my child.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah. So there was a lack of information. But again, she had they received their complaints through a central database now, or like a central dispatch. And so she said that because of that, she had the duty to respond. So I understood she was just doing her job. And I hope to use it, again, like I said, as a chance to educate her. I said, my son would have to go into the crop and pick all of these buds and bring them in and put them on the stove and add some oil and heat it for a certain amount of time. And she's looking at me going, oh. I said, yeah, like he's not going to sit out there and even if he did sit out there and eat a bunch of buds, like he's going to spit them out before he ever gets anything.
Being the fact that, like, even Taven's 7, right? And your little guy's what, the same age, 7, 8? How old's your little guy?
He's 9 now. 9.
Yeah, so they're like intelligent, like, and because like Taven's been exposed, your son's been exposed. We're very open with them. Chances of our children going and grabbing a bud and chewing it up are 0, because we've educated, right? And I mean if you're open with your children, and that's, I think, one aspect people have to understand too, is hiding behind a closed door makes that child thinking taboo. The same as the government.
Exactly.
Taboo.
Exactly.
We have to, as a community, be really lobbying our locals and our municipal and with it, like I said, within our areas, we're a little more able to do so, because BC, I was checking actually, the BC registries, we've got, I think there was almost 10 lobby groups that are going that are registered as lobbyists, that are lobbying the government right now. So something that is not disheartening. I guess it is, to the point when you've got the Canadian Medical Association being one of them, because they're lobbying against and putting caps for patients, which brings us back to the recreational. And like, what would you like for myself? I'm on 10 grams a day. I'm not sure it's nobody's business what anybody else has got, but the plant count is what really seems to be the catalyst for this capping from the doctor's end. So when they've got the 1 gram 5 plants, where we're seeing a plant, like I said, plants to me, like between you, me, and the fence post and everybody in the air, there's one in my living room that's sitting right next to my Dieffenbachia. It's no more toxic. Dieffenbachia is more toxic than the cannabis, right? Sorry, excuse me. But that's where, we're at. We have to, make these people realize that, or not these people, our governments and our law enforcement, that are these plants, like you said, we should be able to grow as many as we want. And when it comes down to the regulation of, what they're doing with it.
But we know we know that it's not going to start there. We're not going to get the system that works for us and makes sense for years. And who knows, I can't speculate how long it will be. I've heard some people say 10, I've heard some people say 20, which is really discouraging, but it's also to be expected that typically you don't get something right the first time. The government does not get things right the first time. And there's a lot of fear. I certainly was aware of that when I heard how sort of happy that Bill Blair was when he went and toured this licensed producer's facility, and he felt so comforted by everything he saw. And I was thinking, wow, like, what did he think it looked like? That it's just, I think there's this idea that drug production is this really like awful, evil meth lab kind of thing. And so again, that's one of the things we pushed with Craft Cannabis, and Cannabis Growers of Canada does it as well. It's this idea that this is an agricultural crop. Like, this is not, it's sort of like it's like producing grapes for wine. Like, our crop, the way it is sitting out in the field at this point in time, is not really worth much. It has to be trimmed and cured properly and processed, and it's not much of anything yet except a bunch of flowers that smell really good.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to go into our next break right now, and then we'll come back to that here in about 5. So our next song is being played. It's called Mary Jane's Story, and it's by Royal Kush Band, and we'll be back in about 5. Thanks. Royal Kush pushback.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
Let me tell a story about a Mary Jane. She treats me so nice, I just can't complain. Well, Mary, 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 Mary Jane, take all my cares away. Jack had the Smoky Bear, he had bubble gum, in the kush from Amazonia. Bought off a Romulan. Maui Wowie hemp stars from the endless skies took him through the Cali mist aboard the Northern Lights. Mr. Bubble, sweet dreams of a sour diesel space queen, took Molly's, Carly's lemon freeze on a magic carpet ride of grenadine. And now Jim Dandy's lamb's bread skunk jelly bean tugs at Willie Nelson's juicy fruit with Lebanese KGB. Well, let me tell a story about a Mary Jane. She treats me so nice, I just can't complain. Well, Mary, 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 Mary Jane, take all my cares away.
Check it. Yo, I was chillin' with my homie, she's an OG Kush. Cousin of Mary and she know me by the OZ. I hold the J tightly in my fingers, so closely like prayer beads or ring around the rosy. I've been bit by white widows and white rhinos, seen the color of Skittles, but what did I know? Later I would run into some other kind droves with crystals that glitter and shine like rhinestones. Sucker punched by this little bastard named Master. We patched it up like plaster the day after. Packed up bowls and glass shattering laughter. Packed up papers like trash in a compactor. Coughed up strawberries, swore a sign nebular. Sure, she was veggin', but I wanted to get with her, or what's left of her. Clone sever her, something just like, but it is never her. Mary Jane.
Let me tell a story about a Mary Jane. She treats me so nice, I just can't complain. Well, Mary, 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 Mary Jane, take all my cares away. Let me tell a story about a Mary Jane. She treats me so nice, I just can't complain. Well, Mary, 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 Mary Jane, take all my cares away.
This is Bubbles from the trailer.
Back with Teresa Taylor. Just like to mention a couple of my sponsors before we get going again is 12 High Chicks Magazine and MJ Creams and Remo's Nutrients. So Teresa, we're back. We're talking about geez, so much stuff. I'm just kind of trying to go back to where we were talking about kind of like the numbers and how many, the fact that they don't have restrictions, or they shouldn't have restrictions on how many we grow. But the fact that, once it's produced, and you're talking about the curing process and where you're sitting at right now is, like you said, it's just kind of there. And after it's processed, it takes, because cannabis isn't just, you can't just grow it in a field and then throw it into a bag. Like, a lot of people don't understand that. There is a process to it, correct?
And I think that's part of why outdoor crops have gotten a bad reputation over the years, is because there used to be a lot of sort of hurry about getting your crop out of whatever bush location you were in and throwing it in a backpack and wheeling yourself out of there and taking it elsewhere to process it and deal with it. So, it's not that. It's really, that doesn't work so good. It doesn't produce quality product.
So your process is, like, right now you're in harvest, and then then you, what do you hang your, like, what do your process that you guys go through?
Yeah, we hang it to dry until you get that, sort of snappy thing on your smaller branches. And then we trim it down into smaller buds, and we cure in glass mason jars. And we just let it do its thing. That's a bit of an art form. I've certainly been learning a lot over the years from my dad, he's made a lot of mistakes, that's for sure. We've had some difficulty, and so I get to learn from some of his experience over the years.
And that's a good thing of having the trial and error, right? I think we all go through that with the trial and error, where we, even as a beginner, like, everybody has to start somewhere. You get the plant that doesn't grow at all. You get, and then you get the males get thrown in there. That's always fun. Like, do you find outside, like when you're growing outdoor, that you have to watch them as closely for the male, or do you, well, of course we're cloning, right? But if you're starting from seed, like, is with the environment, because like I said, I'm pretty naive to the outdoor thing. So with, like, would it be a trigger, or would it just hermaph? Like, what would it be a cattle?
Yeah, I had one male that kind of snuck in this year, and we had a hermaphrodite plant out in the field that I think might have been stress, but we do a lot of clones as well. So there was sort of a mix, probably maybe 75% clones, 25% seed this year, something like that. So that's been interesting. It's hard. That's another difficult thing. I don't know. Some people think it's easy, but I get nervous, and I kind of keep looking, and I'm just like, oh, geez, is this? And if it is, then I'm going to be in trouble, and it's going to spread. It's going to, So there's, that's a bit nerve wracking. That's where. And
you're all organic, so you're not using any chemical.
No, we just supplement our soil. There's so much to learn out there, though. I follow a lot of outdoor producers from the West Coast on Instagram, and there's some amazing products. There's this one farm, I wish I could remember the name for you right now, but it's out of Oregon, and the stuff that they produce is just so incredible. And they are using that hugel culture. I don't know how to say it properly. It's like a German word, but you mound up like decaying wood, and then you put the compost on top, and then you build the soil on top of that, and then they grow on these mounds of decaying wood. And it's just like, it's so amazing, the crops that are coming out of these places. So that's really like, a combination of good genetics and really good soil, and you can get some amazing product.
Right. I think that's a misconception that most people have, including myself. I'm not even going to, deny that I'm not a big outdoor fan, right? Maybe call it pot snobbery a bit, I guess, but you get so used to the hard, tight indoor, but again, different organics, right? It's not so much as, it's what you put into the soil, because, what you put in, of course, comes out. Well, that's, I'm trying to kind of alliterate, like, so when you're doing like TP, like your watering system too, like, do you just rely on specific outdoor, like the rain, or do you guys have a watering irrigation system?
Yeah, we have a drip line system in each of the raised beds. We're going to try some different things next year. This year we used like a gardening plastic kind of coverage over the beds, and I feel like they just didn't breathe enough, and it was maybe not a good move. And I said that at the beginning of the year, but my dad pulled that, I'm your dad. I know what's best thing. And he's like, no, this is good. This will work. This is what I always do. And then so the end of this year, after I showed him a few of these Instagram photos of these places out of Oregon, and I was like, look, and he's like, well, I think next year we might try the straw thing. I'm like, okay, good. There you go. So we're going to keep experimenting.
Oh yeah, and when they get into their senior years, they're a little more difficult to get them to try new things, right?
Well, there's a dynamic I think that happens there too with fathers. I don't know what it is, but they want to be the teachers, and he does a lot of teaching. But sometimes I have that some input. I do a lot of perusing around social media, and I read a lot. And so I read an article the other day about how a lot of the pot industry has been guided by this. They called it bro science. And I was like, oh man, that's kind of an interesting term. But this idea that men have typically been really involved in the industry and passed information on to other men. And so you get all kinds of interesting practices that have just become, the way that this is just the way. This is how we do things. And so, I think there's a bit of room for some of our input as women gardeners.
Yeah, I think, with Women Grow starting up, and then of course there was a Normal Women's Alliance, way back, but a lot of the women that are involved in the movement, never mind the industry. And there is specifically, you can't say that they're two separate things, but there are, because there are women that are still just activists, right? They're just out there trying to make change. And then there are women out there that are actually business women that are taking this to the next level. And they're really coming out and with their own products, with their own ideas, with their own gardens, with, really taking hold of this. And I think we've always been there, just, kind of behind the scenes, like you've always been there. Sarah Campbell's been there. There's so many, like Deb Harper, how many others that have been, Allison Murd and Debbie Schultz Giffen, along the way but these are also activists, right? Not advocates, not so much industry. In the last, probably, I would say probably last 5 years, the industry has really taken off for women.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's some great opportunities. And I think, that's one of the pieces of leverage that women have is for whatever reason, our voice is heard in a compassionate way. We're not viewed as drug dealers. I think that's part of shedding some of that perspective of previous industry players as being all organized crime. That is something that's very unfortunately attached to men in the industry, and men have been a little bit more upfront in the industry. And I think part of that, it goes back to, some child protection concerns. Like we said before, women, some of the women that I know have kept their business a lot more quiet because they've had more to lose. So, whether that's arguable, but that's my thought on that. So when women come out and talk about their use of cannabis, or they talk about the people in their lives that have been changed by cannabis, there's there's this gentleness and receptivity that the community has. That's like, oh, okay, I this person's not just a pothead. And it sucks that men have carried that with them, but that's where we can step up and start to shift that. And that's happened. It's changed a lot. My mom and dad are quite different. My dad, again, obviously super supportive and has been involved for years, but my mom was always quiet about it. And when I ran for the marijuana party, I was like 24, and she was like, this is going to ruin your career. And what are you going to do? And this is, and so it took a while for her to shift. But this summer, I was at her cabin, and she was talking about how her and her husband would love to use cannabis, but aren't smokers. And I had some tincture with me, and I passed it to her one day, and I said, here, okay, this is, how you would use this. And you start off with a smaller dosage. And she's looking at me while I'm explaining this to her, and her eyes are just lighting up, and she's got this huge smile on her face. And she was so thankful that I had passed this to her. Like she wouldn't have walked into a dispensary. I think she still finds that a bit foreign. And so, that's where this goes back to that idea of a Shoppers Drug Mart kind of thing. But
with the Shoppers Drug Mart taking on that would alleviate a lot of stress for seniors that are taking far too many pharmaceuticals. And ultimately, like I said, I'm no more pleased about having the corporate end of anything in our community, but if it's going to help people get what they need without adding to the pharmaceutical I'm pretty. The LC, like the liquor boards, because like we want to go back to that prohibition, of alcohol and how they regulated that. And again, it was big business, right? It was big breweries, and then it took till 1982 before they allowed craft industry to start, even with alcohol. So I'd hate to see that happen with cannabis, where we've got the licensed producer, kind of forefronting with 35 of them almost now, and having to wait how many, 30 years to get crafting in there. Because of the stigma.
Yep. Yeah, it means continuing to break the law and push the envelope. And that's something I think all of us are prepared to continue to do. We really would prefer not to, but will. And that's also like in response to what we hear from our communities. And I'm sure you've seen it as well. Like the amount of outcry that occurs when something like the Shoppers Drug Mart article comes out, and there's all kinds of posts on Facebook, and people are like, fuck that, I'm not doing that, and I'm not gonna. It's like there's so many of those people too, that we know that they will continue to support the industry that has been built up already by all of the advocates and activists and people who've stepped up and have made this industry what it is.
Absolutely. And that's the whole thing, that we want to keep that community of what was started. I think that's what kind of keeps us going, keeps us fighting, and why we have the ones out there going, fuck that, I'm not doing it, is because we're so firmly believing that we have this right to this plant.
And I think you said, you mentioned earlier the difference between the movement and the industry. And I think that that's the important piece to remember, is that just because there is an industry now doesn't mean that the movement is over. It's still not where it needs to be, and there's still work that needs to be done. And again, that's where some of that rift and some of that ill feeling comes from within the cannabis community, that you see people sort of taking advantage of these opportunities to make money and then becoming quiet as an advocate. And that's where it's like, hold on a second, like this game is not over. Like this fight, this piece of it about, inclusion and fairness and, not excluding people who have previous records for cannabis possession, or, continuing to persecute people like this. We can't stop yet.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's where, being one of those people that have a record that, was able to produce under the MMAR, now with this new clause in the ACMPR, it's making me like, not rush out to get one. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not covered under the Allard either, because we moved from Alberta, but I'm not rushing out. I can't grow for myself. I'm not willing to let a designated grower keep 80% of my crop for themselves and give me a pittance, or not get any at all. Because I'm not saying that they're out there, but I've heard a lot of good stories about designated growers, and I've heard some really crappy ones too. So I'm like I said, I'm kind of sitting on the fence. I'm not doing anything that I feel is illegal anyways, or wrong anyways. Illegal maybe, wrong no, but that's, in my own, I think, like I said, within our own values and our own morals, we will do what we accept within ourselves. And I take risks every day. I help patients. I'm not gonna, I take risks every day, but that's what I choose to do. So, and as well with you, like I'm sure, even with our licensing, helping patients, dispensaries are not legal.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most disheartening thing out of this whole new program of ACMPR, and I'm talking about legalization, is that our dispensaries are still at risk, that they're busting in Toronto. Vancouver very luckily haven't, but then you've got poor David Malmo Levine that got robbed, for God's sakes.
Yeah, but the cops came in and stepped up and went after the bad guys. That did not happen 10 years ago.
No, and
so that's awesome.
It's epic, because like I said, but the fact that they were put in that position to be robbed to begin with. Absolutely. It's disheartening, but to see the Vancouver City Police really going after these people is a switch over. Definitely. Like, before it was like you were scared to phone the cops, but then you have on the other aspect where the heck was that I heard a couple weeks ago that they were robbed and the police came in and arrested the dispensary owner. So, there's, depending on what part of the country it seems like we're in, right?
And whether the cop likes you or not.
And that shouldn't be the way it is. Like, province to province, we all know that provinces are different. Like, Alberta's a totally, stronghold, and they're really opening up. Like, the Alberta Justice Minister was just down in Colorado checking out their model down there and seeing that, the taxes do come back, but that the driving impairment hadn't gone up and that the crime rates hadn't spiked, that they'd actually gone down. So she's bringing that back to the Alberta government to say, hey, I was in Denver. And that's a good thing that the justice ministers are looking at models all over the world, like, down to Denver, Oregon. And that's something good. I'd like to see the BC government do a little more, but I think they're more on board than any other government out there, to be honest.
Yeah, I have a friend that works for a union organizing group. Is it BC? Well, it's BC Fed. That's what it is. And we had a couple moments where we butt heads, and he said, oh no, this is moving along, we're going to do this just right, but we want to make sure that the working class to him was the growers, that they don't get screwed anymore. And they had this real idea that the farmers, that the dispensaries make a whole lot of money and that the farmers aren't making very much. And so the best way to handle that is to look at something like a liquor distribution model, that will help to get farmers a fair price for their goods. So they feel like they're doing the right thing. But at the same time, it's like I think what's happening and what has happened is there's a whole lot of people with very little real on the ground experience in the industry or movement making decisions on behalf of the industry. And so that's where the trouble is coming up. And of course, we've been excluded from so many conversations because it's like, well, we don't want the drug dealers and the criminals at the table and and the activists, because the activists are fucking crazy. So it's been really hard to get a voice out there and be considered and heard on a real professional level.
Well, it goes to say though, like really, like cannabis should be put on the same basis as wheat or canola. In the same agricultural sense where, so much per bushel, it should be regulated per pound so that farmers aren't getting screwed. And that it's more, appealing to say a farmer that is growing canola would want to rather grow hemp, make it comparably in price. But then the difference is, canola is only worth $15 a bushel comparably to, cannabis at, $2,000 a pound. And I mean, and that's where it's running right now, even for the outdoor. I'm not sure, what the market is right now as far as.
Gosh, I heard something the other day as low as 800.
I've heard that too. But for indoor, of course, and I'm not disputing the prices should be coming down for the consumer. But the farmers, if they're growing indoors, still have the same cost. And if you're growing outside, still, it's not for your time. It's not free. You're still out there. You're still having to put organic matter into the ground, whether it's compost or whether it's peat moss, if you have to buy manure. Like there's still costs that are incurred in cultivation of anything, whether it's corn, wheat. Wheat isn't free to grow either, right? And it's outside. Still, harvesting isn't free. So,
and we estimate trim costs to be about $200 a pound.
Absolutely.
And that's like labor that's coming in to help. That's not even like all the unpaid work basically that happens.
Right. A lot of it does, a lot of barter goes on when it's in that commodity, right? Mm-hmm. Which a lot of people are willing to take in barter where nobody's going to take a couple bushels of wheat, right? So, different aspects of how the industry has to be set up, but as well as bringing in like the smaller, like the mom and pops, I really don't want to see that part of our community be put away. And with this licensed production going and with not having craft cannabis fighting for the artisans, what would happen to our mom and pops? Unless you hold a medical marijuana license, you're not able to grow for yourself. And I find that disheartening too, because a lot of people don't want to have to go through the process. And I think that, grandma down the street that wants to be able to grow 3 plants in her garden over the summer because it helps her make cookies over the winter shouldn't have to go through the process of doctors and licensing. And I just don't think that's right. I mean, bigger commercial, maybe they should have regulation for the licensed producers on a bigger scale. But for the rest of us, come on. Like, we even know now that, back in the day, 100 plants was a great big, huge grow. Where now 100 plants really isn't much. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, where are you guys at now for where you're heading? Like, do you have a lobbyist that you're going to go to Victoria, or what's your next step now that you guys are getting a little more organized and the harvest is almost done? And what's your next move?
Well, we're waiting for information to come out. I think there's some speculation that we should get a glimpse of what's to come in September by November. So I don't know if you've heard that, but that we might have a little snippet of information that comes from the federal government about what changes are coming along. So we're really waiting to respond to that, because that's the next piece of it, is what will be presented to us. Will it be something like maximum per person plant numbers? Will there be discussion about distribution through alternative channels? Will it be that, existing dispensaries can apply to distribute licensed producers' product exclusively, and then increased enforcement for those moving product from MMAR into the market? It's hard to say. I mean, will it be mandatory that people move and shift into the new model, or will there be some grandfathering? And we don't really know what to expect.
Right. Now you're still under the alert, or you guys
Yes.
Yeah. And that's, you see, like I said, and I'm still sitting on the fence about, the whole ACMPR, because I can't grow for myself, like with the way it sits right now.
Well, and you go and make an application, and your application could be sitting there and waiting for 6 months. Like it's...
Yeah, well, absolutely. Though some friends of mine out in Ontario, they sent their applications in and they were back within 3 weeks and approved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, like I said, they've already applied. They've got their ACMPRs. They've gone ahead and they've already gotten them back. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a little bit of misconception there on some ends of what, maybe it's Health Canada themselves, that depending on what the paperwork. I've also heard that the samples are being sent back, that they haven't even got forms out yet. And I'm going, well, that can't be possible if I'm hearing that people are getting their licensing back already. So, there's so many different misconceptions out there about so many things in our inner movement and in the industry, that having, some clarity would be good for everybody, I think.
Well, and obviously there's the fear is there, because there's this, you're leaving yourself in this unprotected zone and switching applications. And of course, if you moved, then that's, you already faced that level of difficulty. So there's this idea that, well, if I go and switch, I don't think I should rock the boat. I just want to lay low and keep quiet about things.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's where most of us are. Well, I can't speak for everybody. I know that that's where we're at. We're just kind of kicking back here, waiting to see what's going to come out of legalization too. But like I said, I don't like to call it legalization. I like to call it over-regulation, because as much as I like things that are going to be opened up, like you said, it's the government never does anything right the first time. Mm-hmm. So, we've seen that with the MMAR, we've seen that with the MMPR. We've gone through, this is a third program in the last 5 years for medical, from MMAR, PR, ACMPR, court. I honestly believe we're going to have to end up back in court before we're going to actually get a constitutional program for everybody, unless they repeal. And I don't see that happening anytime soon either. Mm-hmm. Well, that looks like that's running us out of time today, my dear. So we're going to wrap this show up, and thank you very much for coming on. And I'd like you to plug your Craft Cannabis and let people know how they can reach out to you and your group, and that you've got a website, and there's also videos available on your website and Facebook and Twitter. So do you want to go ahead and give your website again?
Yeah, the website's craftcannabis.ca. And you can find us on Facebook as well under Craft Cannabis. And you can send me a personal email at Teresa, Teresa, at craftcannabis.ca if you have any questions. And we're looking forward to a positive and inclusive future. But we need everyone to be really consciously aware of where their cannabis is coming from.
Absolutely. So shop local, people, if you can. If you know a local gardener or a local dispensary or somebody that's locally, maybe sustaining themselves, we suggest that maybe you try and check them out. I'd like to thank my sponsors, 12 High Chicks, MJ Creams, Remo's Nutrients. And my next show guest is going to be Corey Yelland. We'll be talking to her next week on Wednesday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, about how she cured her cancer and how she's helping many other patients get to the medicine that they need. So we'll see you all next week. Have a great week and happy smoking.
up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Never once has she let me down, my sweet marijuana with her grams a pound. She's always hanging round in a plastic gown, and when she's spread wide open, I like to get down. We can spend some time together through the stormy weather. I'd run a mile uphill in quicksand just to get her. I'm never worried if she gains a little weight, and when I'm at the club, shit, she's my only date. When she's with me, it's fun for two, but you're my number one, Mary. This one's for you. Marijuana. Girl that always wants to see me. Marijuana. Always wanna watch some TV. Marijuana. Will you bless this face? Marijuana. I'll rest my case. Marijuana. The girl that always wants to see me. Marijuana. Always wanna watch some TV. Marijuana. Will you bless this face? Marijuana. I rest my case. There was a time when I thought I could quit her, but now I'm back on top like married men and babysitters. She never says no, even if I ask if her friends can join. She never asks me where I spend my coin. She pissed me off once but ain't seen my pistol. I'm like a little kid when she's showing me her crystal. I like when she stops by with her cousin Hash and cause these two get me giggling like monkeys with bananas. I like to take the time to thank you for the good times and bad, even when I can't afford ya. The girl that always wants to see me. Always wanna watch some TV. Will you bless this face? I rest my case. The girl that always wants to see me. Always wanna watch some TV. Will you bless this face? I rest my case.
What are you doing? Nothing? Why not? Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website. Sounds like a cool website. Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it. You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.